So, welcome to GYBN Caribbean Biodiversity Webinar Series number 6, Making the Invisible Visible, Monitoring Ocean Protection and Pollution. Thank you once again for joining us. Now, we're really excited to have you collaborating with SkyTruth, an organization that uses satellite data and open access tools to bring greater transparency and accountability to what's happening in our oceans. Today, we'll be hearing from Moses, SkyTruth Biodiversity Program Manager, and Bimini, an impact analyst at SkyTruth. They'll be making us through how tools like the 30 by 30 Progress Tracker and Cerulean are being used to monitor marine protection efforts and detect ocean oil pollution with clear relevance for the Caribbean region. We'll pause at a few points for polls and live demos, and we'll save time at the end of questions and discussions. With that, I'll hand it over to Moses and Bimini to get us started. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks very much to the moderator. Thank you to everyone for being here. We're really excited to be joining you here today to talk a little bit about our organization and some really interesting tools that might be relevant to your work. My name is Moses Jackson. I'm the Biodiversity Program Manager at SkyTruth, and I'm joined by my colleague Bimini Horstman, who's an impact analyst at SkyTruth. I think at this point, I'm going to see if I can share my screen, pull some slides up. Can somebody give me a nod, make sure we can see this okay?
All good.
Great. All right, so welcome once again. Today, Bim and I are going to explore with you how open data and satellite tools can support young biodiversity leaders like yourselves to drive effective conservation campaigns, to influence policies on important environmental issues, and to take informed action to protect our oceans and our lands. So we're going to start with a brief overview of our organization, talk about some of the main conservation issues that we're working on here at SkyTruth, and then dive into two different platforms or tools that we've developed to help address those issues. Bimini is going to do a live interactive demonstration of these platforms a little bit later on, so you can see how they work and start to think about how you might want to use them in your work. We'll also have a couple of polls for you, as our moderator mentioned, just to get a sense of your work and your interests. And then later on, towards the end, we'll have a chance for discussion and questions. And we're really excited to hear your ideas, get some of your feedback on these tools that we're going to share, and then think together about how SkyTruth can support GYBN and your efforts. If possible, we suggest that you please save your questions until after the presentation, as I think it's going to be best if we can address those questions sort of together as a group in a discussion. So, who is SkyTruth? Who are you talking to here today? Well, we're a conservation technology nonprofit organization. We're founded in 2001, and we're headquartered in the United States, but our work is global in scope. We specialize in using satellite imagery and open data to make environmental change and environmental impacts visible, measurable, and actionable. One of the main ways we do this is by creating free tools, publicly available tools, and platforms that can equip the conservation community and the environmental movement to really catalyze action on key environmental issues. So we're a small organization and we don't do on-the-ground conservation work ourselves. Our mission is really to democratize access to conservation information so everyone can see what's happening in the places that they care about, and everyone can use that information to make a positive impact wherever they are. So we see our role as really to harness technological innovations and turn them into public evidence that can be used by anyone, anywhere. And that includes NGOs, governments, indigenous people in local communities, researchers, journalists, youth organizations, and just ordinary citizens who care about conservation and care about the environment. In terms of our approach and impact, so, although SkyTruth is a technology organization, I think our work is really grounded in the communities that are most impacted by things like pollution, by extractive industries, and by biodiversity degradation. That's really sort of what shapes our approach to our work. And we partner closely with lots of different partners around the world to really co-develop tools that meet their specific needs. So we developed a number of different tools and platforms that do different things, like detecting oil spills, highlighting and revealing destructive mining practices, tracking global conservation targets. And SkyTruth also co-founded a platform called Global Fishing Watch, you may have heard of, which is widely used to monitor fishing activity and then support sustainable fisheries around the world. Just to give you a couple quick examples of our impact, we helped reveal the extent of chronic oil pollution in places like Brazil, the Niger Delta, the Coral Triangle, to help advocacy groups there in those places push back against harmful oil and gas development. We've helped equip conservation campaigns in Europe with the tools and data they need to fight for more and better biodiversity protections across the Mediterranean Sea. We've helped provide key data and insights to help park rangers in Peru shut down illegal mining operations that were essentially destroying indigenous lands and poisoning rivers. And here in the United States, pretty close to home, we helped map the destruction from a really destructive practice, mountaintop coal mining, and then help local conservation groups hold those companies accountable for their actions. So today we're going to focus specifically on two different SkyTruth platforms that we think are of interest to this group. One is called the 30 by 30 platform, and the other is called Cerulean. So we're going to start with the 30 by 30 platform. Some of this may or may not be review, but you might be aware that the Convention on Biological Diversity is the international treaty that sets the global framework for biodiversity action. The framework, it's called the Global Biodiversity Framework. It lays out 23 different targets that the world needs to achieve by the year 2030. So target 3, known as 30 by 30, it's a really important one because it commits countries to conserving at least 30% of the world's land, waters, and seas by the year 2030. And more than that alone, it commits countries to doing that by effectively managed, ecologically representative, and well-connected systems of protected areas and other effective conservation measures, while respecting the rights of indigenous people and local communities. So this is pretty specific language, and that language makes it really clear that 30 by 30 is not just about creating a bunch of paper parks that don't really protect anything in practice, and that it's definitely not about violating human rights simply by excluding people from their lands and waters. So if we're serious about 30 by 30, we really want to achieve this goal, which we can do, we have to focus on protecting the places that are the most important for biodiversity, and we have to ensure that those protections are real and that they're meaningful. And then we have to ground our efforts in the leadership and the knowledge of indigenous people and local communities. And in my view, and I think in SkyTruth's view, we should not only be respecting the rights of indigenous people and local communities, but we really should be following their lead. So I think, youth organizations like GYBN have a really important role to play in 30 by 30, especially when it comes to things like accountability, advocacy, and just helping turn political commitments and talk into on-the-ground impact. And I'm sure there's lots of ways that this group is already doing that, and we'd love to hear more about that in the discussion later on. So I think, oh, that's not what I want to do. Let's go here. Yeah, some brief context, because some of you might be wondering, okay, great. I understand the 30 by 30 goal, but why might we need a 30 by 30 monitoring platform? So our goal with the 30 by 30 platform is really to accelerate progress towards the 30 by 30 target. Because when it was adopted in 2022, there was no clear, independent, and publicly accessible way to monitor progress towards the goal. It sort of felt abstract because it was really just words. There was information about progress, but that information was fragmented and it was sort of tucked away in these different reports and data sets that were hard to find and hard to understand. So SkyTruth set out to change that. And we looked at all the different types of tools out there and saw a need for a platform that could specifically make 30 by 30 goals and data visible and accessible to everyone, and do that at global scales, regional scale, and the national scale. We needed a tool that drives urgency and public accountability to get everybody on board. And we needed something that could provide meaningful measures of progress and efficacy. So not just how much land or water is protected, but how well is it protected. And then we needed a tool that could integrate multiple data sets, including marine and terrestrial data, in one sort of user-friendly interface. So you didn't have to juggle multiple tools to be able to paint a clear picture. So that was the intent of the 30 by 30 platform, and that's how it's being used now. Um, and just briefly here, there's actually two different tools under the 30 by 30 platform. These are both free resources, so they're available to anyone with an internet connection. The first is the 30 by 30 Progress Tracker. That's an interactive map and dashboard for monitoring progress and driving action towards the 30 by 30 goal. The other is called the Conservation Builder, and that's a lightweight planning tool for creating conservation scenarios and assessing their potential contribution to 30 by 30. And so Bimi is going to demonstrate these tools in a moment so you can see them in action. And then after the presentation, or whenever you have more time, we definitely encourage you to explore these tools on your own. They're super easy to use, as we'll see in a moment during the demo. But before we do the demo, we're going to do a quick audience poll. So if our moderator could please pull up the first poll questions, that would be great. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and turn it to Bimini.
Great. Thank you so much, Moses, for that very insightful intro. And while you are all answering these polls, Moses and I are going to share a little bit about our own career journeys, since we know that many of you in the audience are also early career ocean professionals, which I would consider myself also early career. So I got my undergraduate degree at Davidson College in biology and environmental studies. After that, I spent a few years working at various nonprofits, as well as a city government sustainability department. After those experiences, I decided it was time to go back for my master's degree, which I did through the Erasmus Mundus joint master's program in Europe. I got my master's in marine environment and resources. I would highly recommend this experience. They offer scholarships, particularly to non-EU residents, and I was able to study at 3 different European universities. As I was finishing my master's in the third semester and while I was working on my thesis research, I started as an intern with SkyTruth on their geospatial intern team because I had a growing interest in remote sensing of the oceans and conservation technology. I would highly recommend SkyTruth's internship program. It got me to where I am now. I am an impact analyst on SkyTruth's impact team, so creating the bridge between technology and environmental impacts. Um, so yeah, if you have a US address, you are eligible to apply for the internships program, which you can find on SkyTruth's website. And I will hand it over now to Moses to talk a little bit about his journey.
Yeah, thanks, Bimini. And just to be sure everybody sees the link in the chat to fill out the poll. Check on that. But in terms of my career journey, so early in my career, I spent 2 years in Honduras, in Central America, working with local indigenous communities on sustainable water projects. And that was the thing that really got me excited about this space, about working in international conservation and working with local communities. From there, I went to graduate school. I spent a year in DC and a year in Costa Rica studying environmental policy and sustainable development. And then after that, I joined the United States Forest Service, so a government agency here in the United States, where I managed international cooperation programs focused on climate and conservation. I was with the Forest Service for a long time, until last year, actually, when most of our international programs were terminated, sadly. So at that point, I decided to stop working in the U.S. government, and I was really lucky to have the opportunity to join the SkyTruth team. I'm very happy here. The people are amazing. The work is super interesting, and we're able to keep making an impact with or without direct support from the U.S. government, which I think is really important in these times we find ourselves in now. That's a bit about my journey. And yeah, so I'm hoping everybody was able to fill out the poll so we get a little bit of information about you guys.
I think we have one more poll before I start the demo. I'm not sure if that poll has been deployed yet or not. Okay, here it is. Thank you for responding to the poll. It's great to see that biodiversity protection is a major focus of some of your work. So hopefully this demo of the 30 by 30 progress tracker will be useful to you. Okay, I think in the interest of time, we can go ahead and move along to the demo portion of this webinar. So thank you for responding, everybody. I am now going to share my screen and walk you all a little bit through the 30 by 30 progress tracker tool. All right, so can everybody see my screen? All right, I hope so.
Yep.
Great. So this is SkyTruth's 30 by 30 progress tracker. When you enter to the tracker, this is the landing page. And you can do quite a bit here, but the basic functionality is being able to understand how much marine and terrestrial area is currently protected at a global, regional, and country level. We can see the current trajectory of progress relative to the 2030 deadline. And we can see that on the left panel here, we can see that we're at 17.6% for terrestrial and 9.9% for marine. We can also track how much of critical terrestrial and marine habitats are being protected. So here in the terrestrial tab, we can see some different types of habitats, as well as on the marine side here. I think some of you are interested in mangroves, so we can see here that our mangroves layer is from Global Mangrove Watch. And if you're ever wondering where any of our layers come from, you can always click on the little eye symbol next to each of them. So on the marine side, we also have conservation protection levels, which is sort of an assessment of the effectiveness of different marine protected areas. This is done by MPA Atlas, and we incorporate it here into the map. We can also see the levels of fishing protection on the marine side as well. On the terrestrial side, we don't necessarily have a global resolution protected area effectiveness assessment, but SkyTruth is working on one of our own, so stay tuned for that later on this year. So I think next, I would like to ask the audience, maybe you can put in the chat if there is a specific country that you're interested in seeing, and we can kind of do the demo on that country to start with. All right, let's see. I can't see the chat, so if someone, maybe Devon, if you're
Okay,
able
great.
to.
We have someone from Grenada as well as St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So we can go in order with Grenada first.
Okay, great. So in order to look at an individual location, you can search for it here. And the tracker will zoom to your location of interest here. So in terms of marine protections, we can see that there is still likely a long way to go in terms of marine conservation coverage in this country, a little bit better on the terrestrial side, where you can activate different habitats here. But on the marine side, so we know this is a Caribbean country, so let's say we were interested in warm water corals, mangroves. We can activate these habitat layers and you can see them in their respective colors here. So let's zoom to some of these warm water corals that don't necessarily have protections on them right now, at least according to the Protected Planet World Database of Protected Areas, which is where we reference these purple polygons from. So this kind of brings me to another feature of the Progress Tracker, which is called the Conservation Builder. So in the Conservation Builder, you can draw your own polygons for proposed protected areas and see how they would increase protections towards the 30 by 30 goal. So let's see. It's very easy to use. You can draw a shape just like this. And coming down the pipeline soon, you will be able to also upload your own shape files in here. But for now, we are drawing them. And let's see this. Wow, this brought, oh, that was terrestrial. But marine, we got up to 0.2%. And we can also look at the fishing protections in this area, as well as the protection levels. So it doesn't look like either of these have been evaluated because they are both in light purple rather than dark purple, which would be the assessment for fully or highly protected. So that is how the Conservation Builder works on the country level. There is also another feature I want to show that we just released called Custom Regions. Custom Regions is a feature that was highly requested by regional advocacy groups, both in the Caribbean and the Mediterranean, who wanted to know specific progress of groups of countries towards the 30 by 30 goal. So, for example, in the Caribbean, it could be a group of small island developing states, or in the Mediterranean, it would be Mediterranean Sea bordering countries to track progress towards a Mediterranean 30 by 30, for example. So, if anybody has a group of countries that are adjacent, that they're interested in using this custom region function, we can try it out. Feel free to put it in the chat. If not, that's totally fine too. I can do an example. Are we seeing anything in the chat, Devon?
There is, apart from Grenada, there is St. Vincent and the Grenadines, along with Guyana and Antigua and Barbuda. However, to the question that was just asked, I haven't seen anything posted in the chat. So guys, you can post your insights in the chat and I'll relate it to our presenter. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just to do the Caribbean region.
Yeah, that was what I was going to do. I didn't if anyone had any other specific groupings, but I will go ahead and do the Caribbean region. So to make a custom region, you click Make Custom Region up here in the left. Then you can click on specific countries and add them to your custom region. So let's choose a few Caribbean nations here. And let's see how progress is going towards 30 by 30. So just with this small group, we have marine conservation coverage at 6.7% and terrestrial coverage at 18.6%. So essentially, to use this, you can click on any countries that you're interested in, and the statistics on the left side will live update. They also update live for the habitats. So if you have habitats of interest, you can track them here. These types of visuals and statistics can be really useful for journalism, for advocacy campaigns, and for social media in order to push for higher protections and show how increasing protections would help the biodiversity in an area. All right, and there is just one more feature that I wanted to demo to you all live today, which is just that I know that some of you are interested now in the high seas with the recent ratification of the High Seas Treaty. This is a super relevant topic right now. And I did want to show in the Progress Tracker that if you go to Regions and High Seas, Areas Beyond National Jurisdiction, we actually have the percentages for the high seas. So we can see here, high seas are at 1.5% protection. But this is where planning protections in a lightweight scenario kind of way with the 30 by 30 Progress Tracker can be super useful. So we can turn on this fishing effort layer that we get in from Global Fishing Watch. And we can also turn on the establishment stage. So here we can see different fishing effort hours in areas of the high seas, as well as protected areas in the high seas that are not fully established, but may be proposed or committed. So when planning for new high seas protections, it's important to look at where activity is already happening, such as fishing activity. And I would encourage you to try out the Conservation Builder, check out an area of the high seas that you think is valuable for proposing new protections, and see how much it increases the marine conservation coverage in terms of percentage towards 30%. So I also just want to mention that the Progress Tracker is available in 4 different languages. You can see them here in the top right. I also would encourage you, as you're using it, to try using this contact feature, logging any sort of ideas you have for improving the Progress Tracker, ways that it would be easier for you to use for your conservation purposes, or to contact any member of our team. Our tech team takes these issues very, very seriously, and we always love getting feedback from our users. All right, I will go back to the presentation now. So what we've seen from the demo just now taught us that we are now able to answer where and what needs more protection in different regions. We can create that in the Conservation Builder, and we can create graphics that serve as a very helpful starting point for evaluating progress and gaps. So this is a scenario that I encourage you all to explore on your own. It doesn't have to be for the Dominican Republic. It can be for any country that is of interest to you. So imagine you're mobilizing support for an MPA proposal in, let's say in this case, the Dominican Republic. What data would you highlight in your campaign, petition, or social media? I would encourage you to visit 30by30.skytruth.org and play around with it yourself. Great. Now I'm going to stop screen sharing for a moment while we transition into our next poll.
Good to see these responses coming in. It looks like everybody decided to respond at the same time, which is great.
Thanks,
Oil.
everyone. I'll go ahead and move on to the second tool that we wanted to share with you today. All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen. All right, so now we'll introduce another key tool that SkyTruth offers. This is called Cerulean. Cerulean is the world's first free, publicly available technology that uses artificial intelligence and satellite imagery to track chronic ocean oil pollution and identify the potential sources of that pollution. So, using Cerulean, we track and monitor chronic oil pollution from both ships and offshore platforms dumping oily waste into the ocean. Chronic oil pollution is different from the massive oil spills and infamous environmental disasters that we've all seen in the news, such as Deepwater Horizon in the Gulf of Mexico, for example. Chronic oil pollution often comes in the form of smaller scale oil spills that don't normally attract as much attention. But the smaller spills can compound, becoming a huge threat to ocean ecosystems and coastal communities. So many stationary oil platforms routinely discharge oily drilling fluids and produced water. And far too many ships continue to dump improperly treated oily bilge water into the sea, even though that practice has been illegal under international law for 50 years. So individually, these oil slicks tend to be pretty small, maybe 10 to 20 kilometers long, kind of like the ones you see in the bottom right images of the screen here. These are satellite images of chronic oil slicks. But they're so common that when you add them all together, they represent a massive amount of pollution entering the ocean. According to one study published by Nature, over the past few years, the amount of oil entering the oceans was an area larger than the size of France twice. So that is a very large amount of oil entering the oceans. And so to address this problem, SkyTruth developed an innovative AI model that can detect these slicks automatically from Sentinel-1 satellite imagery due to the way that oil reflects off of the water in identifiable patterns, which can help train the machine learning and help match them to their potential culprit, which we can show you in a moment. So this is the Cerulean interface when you enter onto the platform. We've been running our oil slick detection model since 2020, and we've mapped thousands of oil slicks all over the world. Based on the data we've analyzed, our conservative estimate is that almost 84 million gallons are discharged every year by ships at sea. Here you can see clearly the orange areas all represent potential oil slicks. The teal areas are protected areas from the World Database on Protected Areas, the same polygons that you saw in the Progress Tracker. So for those of you who are studying the impacts of maritime activity on ocean biodiversity, this is an issue that you are definitely going to want to be following, and we hope Cerulean can be the tool that helps you do that. So Cerulean slick detections are updated from publicly available Sentinel-1 satellite imagery, and our algorithm can make detections 100 times faster than human reviewers could alone. I also want to point out in the bottom right here of the screen, you can also contact our tech team logging issues and requests for new features or improvement. They monitor these very consistently and love hearing from our users. So I wanted to give an example in the Caribbean. On an older version of Cerulean, SkyTruth conducted a study in 2022, finding that between June 2020 and November 2021 alone, the cumulative amount of oil that was leaking from offshore infrastructure into the Gulf of Paria and the eastern coast of Trinidad to be between 55 and 260,000 gallons. So here we can see the chronic oil pollution off of Trinidad's coast. These spills originate from the offshore infrastructure within those fields. However, of course, this is also an area with natural oil seeps. That's why the infrastructure is there, of course. So Cerulean now has a natural seep warning system in areas of the world that have known natural oil seepage. So when you find a slick on Cerulean, it will come up with this warning letting you know to maybe ask an expert analyst about whether or not the pollution signature looks to be anthropogenic or from a natural seep. Which brings me to my next point, slick verification in Cerulean. So you can now request verification of oil slick detections in Cerulean. And AI is super essential to saving time and energy on detecting these oil slicks, but it does not eliminate the need for human expert review. And I am now going to talk about an example of why human review is so important. So in the past year, an investigation by Greenpeace Bulgaria, which was powered by SkyTruth Cerulean, revealed over 170 slicks covering 819 square kilometers in Bulgarian Black Sea waters. Most of the slicks likely came from illegally discharged bilge water, which, as I talked about before, is a hidden but devastating source of marine pollution that disrupts ecosystems and rarely makes it into the official statistics. So by combining Cerulean's detections with Greenpeace's field verification, the investigation sparked widespread national and regional media coverage and renewed calls for stronger protections in the Black Sea. So on the slide, each orange line represents a cerulean slick detection. And when we initially ran the model for this EEZ, Bulgaria's exclusive economic zone, there were over 200 slick detections. So we needed to review them with expert analysts to ensure the credibility of the report and make it even more impactful once it was reviewed by human experts to verify which slicks were false positives and which ones were anthropogenic. So I'm just going to give one example of another way that you can use cerulean. So every vessel has its own maritime mobile service identifying number. And you can actually type these numbers into Cerulean and see if a vessel has been associated with any slicks. So let's say you were interested in knowing, where has this vessel been polluting? Has Cerulean detected any pollution from this specific vessel? So let's take the number here, put it into Cerulean. Can you all see this? I hope. Let me know if you can't see Cerulean. We're going to paste the number into here. And Cerulean currently goes back in time to the beginning of 2023, so I'm just going to adjust our date range here according with that. And let's search for this vessel. Okay, so we can see in the bottom left here, this vessel is associated with 2 slicks, these orange dots on the map. And I'm also going to turn on these marine protected area layers, because it does look like one of these slicks might be inside a marine protected area. So let's check it out. Looks like it is indeed inside of this marine protected area. And we can see the track of the vessel from its automatic identification system. And over here on the left, we can see that this slick has been verified by a SkyTruth expert, and the source has also been verified. So experts have determined that this is indeed a slick that was produced by this vessel specifically on this date. So if we want to learn a little bit more about this vessel, we can click on the source profile here. This vessel is called the Bocha Mumbai. It's actually a convicted polluter in US waters. And you can also see how many slicks it's associated with total, impacted protected areas, how many times it's turned off its broadcasting system, which is a very hot topic at the moment. Cerulean also has a dark vessel detection feature, which you can explore as you're using Cerulean yourself as well. So that is one other practical use of Cerulean. And I am going to pass it back to Moses to close us out.
Bimini, thanks so much for the demo. I'm relatively new to SkyTruth, so I'm just fascinated by both of these tools. And I think it's so cool how on Cerulean, you can just look at the waters around an area that you care about, zoom in and see potential oil slicks, and then find out about the boats who might have done it. I feel like it's a really powerful way to understand and explore chronic oil pollution that's happening, sort of right where you live. I think it's just so interesting. But thanks for the great demo. Really appreciate that. And yeah, just wanted to spend a moment here thinking about alignment between GYBN and SkyTruth and some of the tools that we've just shared with you. So now that you've had a glimpse of these tools, thank you again, Bimini. It's helpful to think about how you want to use these tools as youth biodiversity champions. I've listed a couple ideas here on the slide for ways that you might use them, but I'm sure there's many more than what's here. But for example, advocacy campaigns. So if you're interested in bringing people together to push for more and better biodiversity protection wherever you are, or to fight against harmful pollution in the ocean, like we just saw via Cerulean, you can use these tools to design evidence-based campaigns with reliable statistics and pretty compelling visuals as well. If you're interested in capacity building, so if you want to enhance the technical capacity of your organization, of your community, or of your university or fellow students on these conservation issues, you already have access to these tools. And they're user-friendly platforms that can serve as the basis for training and learning and teaching others basic GIS skills or, the issues themselves. So issues around marine oil pollution or the 30 by 30 protection target. And then if you're one of these people who are focused on developing specific policy and planning prescriptions and solutions for conservation, these tools are really handy for stakeholder engagement. Being able to make and to share maps, even just simple maps, is a really powerful way to collaborate and to devise solutions together from a place of shared understanding. So, ask that you think about that, reflect a little bit on ways that you might incorporate these tools in your work. And yeah, I think we have some discussion questions on the next slide to just kind of seed some thoughts and get ready to open it up for discussion and questions here. So some examples of questions, and you don't have to respond to these questions. We're interested in your reactions to the tools, any thoughts you might have. But if you do have thoughts about what would you find most interesting, or what did you find most interesting or relevant to your work or studies, and what surprised you? If you noticed any challenges or issues or limitations with the tools and how you might use them, we'd love to hear about that as well. And most importantly, how could you envision using these tools? How are they relevant to your work? And what are some ways that you might incorporate them or share them with others to incorporate in your colleagues or your partners' work? And then, of course, any other feedback or questions. I didn't notice any questions in the chat, but now is time for open discussion. So if you want to open up your mic and ask the question out loud, you can feel free to do that. You can also feel free to put it in the chat. But we'll pause here for a little while and see if there's any questions.
Okay, guys, just to reiterate, don't forget to post your question in the chat and the country that you're posting from.
Oh, and I see Ali's question there, which is a great question. Bimini, do you want to field that one? I can read it if you can't see it.
Yeah, that would be great.
Is there a way to download data, for example, clipped to a specific country or region, not entire data sets, to use that in our own maps?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I didn't show it in Cerulean, but you can download and upload into Cerulean. You can download not only a screenshot of the map in a certain place, but also an incident report if you find something of interest. It'll generate a PDF with all the information that you might need. On the 30 by 30 progress tracker, we are working on that, but for right now, we do not have download functionality, mostly because all of the data in the progress tracker is aggregated from other data sources. So if you did want specific polygons, you can go click on the little eye next to any of the data sources and download those on your own. But for now, most people are using it with their own screenshots. And we have received some user feedback about different types of data download people might be interested in being able to do in Cerulean in the future. So if you have ideas, definitely either, you can email us after this, or you can use the contact tool on Cerulean for different types of data download you might want to do.
So there's another question in the chat. Does SkyTruth have a program to track and map the movement data and territories of specific species, or track targeted species in areas of both economic and ecological importance?
That's a great question. I'm happy to take a stab at that one. And Bimini, if you want to add, feel free. Great question. That's something that we're actively working on. I would love to see a key species distribution layer in the tracker. The question that we're grappling with is what layer? So we're not going to be able to put all the species that are important for everybody in this tool, right? Because we want to be as impactful as possible to as many people as possible. So we really are working to identify what those key species would be, both for marine and terrestrial. And we're working with some partners on that now to identify, what's the best case research, or what's the state of the science on this? What are the species that are going to be most important? We have a few ideas on that. On the marine side, one is important marine mammals and those areas of distribution. So we actually have a meeting next week to talk about that, integrating that data layer. So the short answer to your question is not yet. We don't have key species distribution, but we will soon. I think that's the short answer. Great question on that.
So there's another question coming from Lisa. Now, Cerulean's ability to verify spill sources by corroborating Sentinel data with AIS data is awesome. The incident PDF function sounds great for journalists too. Is there a social media account or RSS feed that posts verified spills as they are found?
Would you want to take a stab at that
Sorry,
one?
I was finding my unmute. We don't have a dedicated social media account or RSS feed for verified slicks as they come out because it's usually on a user basis. So sometimes users are requesting a lot of slicks at once. But when you make an account in Cerulean, which is how you gain access to the verified slicks feature, you can see, you get more access and you can see which slicks have been verified and which have not. But if that's something that is interesting to you, it's definitely a great piece of feedback.
Okay, I have a question, guys. So this question with regards to Guyana. So with the 30 by 30 goal aiming to protect, of course, 30% of our oceans by 2030, how can satellite monitoring and open data tools support Caribbean, small island, and coastal states, particularly emerging oil and gas sector like Guyana, in making invisible threats such as illegal fishing, offshore pollution, and environmental non-compliance visible, measurable, and enforceable in real time?
Yeah, that's a really great question. In terms of illegal fishing, I would hop over to our partners at Global Fishing Watch. They have some really great resources for tracking that. And then in terms of pollution, I think it definitely take a look in Cerulean at your EEZ and try to identify, you know, which pollution events have happened and when. In there, it can be very useful. We have a lot of government users who use Cerulean for that purpose and also to make sure that their fleets are complying properly with regulations. And then if there's a specific event that you'd like or SkyTruth experts to look into, we also do that kind of work sometimes when people reach out to us and say that there's been oil washing up. Can you please take a look and see if this could be the source? We're always happy to help with those kinds of cases. And we also offer trainings to users in other countries. So that's one of the benefits of being a remote organization is if you're interested in scheduling a training in order to build capacity for more users in the enforcement field, definitely we are open to that. And I'll switch to this slide with our emails if you'd like to reach out. You can also reach out to hello@skytruth.org.
Thanks very much. I think that answered the question.
Yeah, and in the chat, I dropped a link to Global Fishing Watch, which I think we mentioned was co-founded by SkyTruth a few years back, and a lot of people use Global Fishing Watch for some of the points in the question that was posed, specifically around fishing activity. So there's a couple data layers in Global Fishing Watch that allow you to really zoom in on fishing activity over time, and it's satellite based, so it reflects the apparent level of fishing effort in a set period of time. Definitely encourage you to check that out.
Okay, thanks much, guys. Are there any more questions? Kindly post your questions in the chat.
Not really a question, but from my end, I just want to say it's like really, um, I think it's a really cool tool, especially from the custom region perspective of the 30 by 30 tracker tool, because I typically work with UK overseas territories. There's 14 of us, but we're spread all across the globe. So this feels like a very intuitive kind of way and like sort of picking that kind of subgroup, if you will, to look at what progress we're sort of making as territories, because they have this like statistic that they throw around that UK overseas territories have 90% of the UK's biodiversity. So it'd be really interesting to like just focus on those subgroups, even though they're not in like one area or one region, but like kind of separate them as their own kind of subgrouping. So it's already like flagging ways I can use this tool towards my own sort of work, focusing on overseas territories. And I'm sure it could be the same for other similar overseas territories for like other countries as well.
Great point, Rakeem. Yeah, and you mentioned, territories versus sovereign nations, and the difference. It's from a data perspective, they're a little bit tricky to split up, right? Because like you have the UK, but then they have all these other territories elsewhere, and so who's claiming what? But thankfully, the 30 by 30 Progress Tracker, our team has been able to disaggregate that. So you can either look at the territories or the country, and you can do it both ways. So thanks for pointing that out, Rakeem.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and last thing I'll say is that, we've been mentioning throughout, but we're always working to improve these tools. These are works in progress. We keep enhancing them. We're a small organization, so it takes us time to integrate new features. But this is something that we're always thinking about. We're always talking to partners about what more can we add? How can we make this more useful? And so feedback and input from groups like this is really valuable to us. So, if you have questions in the future or you have suggestions or feedback in the future, don't hesitate to reach out. Bim and I are more than welcome to chat with you to field your questions. Because again, this is what we do. We want to make these tools as useful as possible for as many people as possible.
Okay,
Yeah,
guys.
sorry, I'm a bit late on it, but did have a feedback. I find the first chart particularly a bit less user-friendly. If anything that can be improved over time is to try to make it a little easier to understand, to use, to break down the data. As a 30 by 30 program. I think that could be improved quite substantially to help persons understand it and use it a little much easier.
That's great feedback. Thanks for that comment. Yeah, I'm sure there's ways that we can improve that. And if you had sort of specific suggestions about what specifically would make it more user-friendly for your use case, that would be really valuable information for us. You can feel free to expound now, shoot us an email, use the contact function within the tool itself. But yeah, we would love to get specific ideas around how we can improve the interface. Thank you for that comment.
So guys, are there any more questions, comments?
I have a comment related to what was just said. One observation I made that I think would be key would be well, I don't know how plausible it is with smaller countries like Grenada, but allowing users to actively see like which part of the country or the name of the area that the marine protected area is in. So you have it's easier to just see and understand where in the country it is, because sometimes not all maps are drawn to perfect scale or to resemble what we may know. So it might be easier if certain marine protected areas have a label to them on the function itself. So you can see and know, okay, this marine protected area is close to here, which I know there's a development happening somewhere in the country. That's just something I think would be important.
You're muted.
I think you're muted. Yeah.
Just talking to myself over here. I was going to say, Bimini, if do you have a reaction to that question? Because I'm not sure. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you don't, that's fine. But I wanted to defer to you first.
No, not exactly. You can go ahead.
Well, one thing is, so you can visually identify where the MPA is, and also, I don't know if it was clear on the map, but you can look at the EEZ, so the exclusive economic zone, and there's a clear border, and it says, which countries. It'll say Grenada exclusive economic zone, and then you can see, visually if that marine protected area falls in that zone. But also what we didn't show is there's a little black box that says show, or it says open, what does it say? Insights table. There's a black box or insights table. So you can also look at all the data that's represented visually on the map. You can see that in a tabular format, so in a table. That might get you a little closer to what you're looking for. And thanks for that question.
Are there any more questions, guys? Concerns, comments?
And I was just thinking about a little further in terms of some of the ways it could be improved. I mean, one of the first ones that's coming to my mind right now is just probably try to focus some of the information directly around what the person is viewing and what they're trying to accomplish, instead of like a amalgamation of all the information all at once. It tends to, like, the clutter and so on, for a lot of persons that tend to make the experience a little more difficult. So if there's a way in which, like, they select certain features, they could just be able to focus in on that particular set of information. That would be a start in some areas. Of course, I would continue thinking about it, but I appreciate the challenge. Thank you so much.
No, you're right. Excellent comment, because that is a real challenge, because we set out to create a global tool, something that was applicable looking at global data sets. And so, if you have a very specific function that you're thinking about, it's really hard to portray that at the global level, because everything becomes cluttered. So it's like everything that we want to add, the more we add, we have to be really careful, because it can degrade the user experience for somebody who doesn't care about those things that we just added, right? So we have to be very thoughtful about what we choose to put in, and also what we choose not to put in. So your point is very well taken. This is a challenge that we're grappling with, is how complex to make it versus how easy it is for anyone to use. You really hit the nail on the head with that comment.
Okay, guys. With that being said, I think this comes to the end of the presentation. There aren't any more questions. So once again, thank you to Moses and Bimini for showing us how these tools make the invisible visible, and to everyone who joined us today. We really encourage you to explore this platform further, share them within your networks, and think about how this kind of data can support advocacy, research, and action in your own context. On behalf of GYBN Caribbean, thank you for being part of this conversation, and we hope to see you at our next Biodiversity Matters webinar. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so
welcome.
much,
you.
everyone.